Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast, a podcast for anyone who finds themselves in the ambiguous adventure of young adulthood. A season marked by uncertainty, change, love, heartbreak, and a whole lot of big decisions. Sit down with me for some real and raw conversations with some incredible people as we dig into what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus in this beautiful yet complicated season of life. If this podcast helps you in any way, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. Be sure to join the conversation on Instagram by following goingsomewhere.podcast. We're all going somewhere. We might as well go there together. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. Today, I am joined by my friend Tatenda Dzvokora. How are you today?
I'm great. It's good to be here.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm pumped to have you.
Thank you.
I know I reached out to you when I was in Bismarck, and
Yep.
it didn't work out, but you're like, I'm coming to Fargo.
Yes. Yeah,
Here we
we
are.
made it.
We're back in the home
Yep.
set.
The home set. Coming back to Fargo always feels like home because
Yes.
I spent most of my time. I guess I've spent 4 years.
Yep.
I spent 4 years in Fargo, so yeah, always feels like home.
Yeah, and because I got to know you while you were at NDSU, you were
Yep.
running track,
Yep.
you were part of our Chi Alpha group, and then from there you also jumped on board and started volunteering with AO1 Foundation, our camp, and so
Yeah,
it's been fun.
it's been awesome. I remember when, because my family moved to Bismarck from Zimbabwe, and I was church hopping, looking for a church, and I went to Evangel, and I sat next to this man, and I told him I'm going to NDSU next year, and they were like, you should find Stephen Glasser. I'm like, who is Stephen Glasser? I was like, I'll give you his number, and then I got connected to you right when I came to NDSU, so that was fun.
And that was Arlen Dwelly, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Remember the name? I almost forgot him.
He was like my pastor growing up, and then when I became a missionary with Chi Alpha, he and his wife Fran supported me from like day one. They're like
Wow.
the kindest, like most encouraging. I remember I went to like raise support. You know, I had to go to people and, you know, share what God was doing through Chi Alpha and ask them to support me financially. And they like laid hands on me, prayed over me, and I felt like $1 million
What a
going out,
blessing.
you know.
That's
so it was
awesome.
awesome. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
incredible. So yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself. Who is Tatenda? Kind of what's your story? Where are you from?
Yeah, so my name is Tatenda, born and raised in Zimbabwe. So Tatenda actually means thank you. I spent most of my childhood in Zimbabwe, and then after high school, I moved to China for college. But at that time, my dad was already here in the United States, but I spent a little bit of time in China before I moved here. I spent like 2 years in China, but most of my childhood I was in Zimbabwe. Went to middle school, high school in Zimbabwe. Born and raised in a Christian home. My parents were never together, so I was raised by my grandma, who was just, the sweetest soul. Like she is amazing. She was amazing. She's gone now to be with the Lord. But she took me to church, which was great. Like I loved going to church with my grandma, but I feel like just growing up, it was really, they had knowledge of who Jesus was and who God was, but I never really had a chance to, or really got to the point of opening my heart and receiving Jesus as my Lord and Savior. So I would say I went through the motions when I was young and when I was in middle school and high school. I didn't meet the Lord until I was done with high school, right before I left Zimbabwe for China. And it was just a sweet moment. It was one of those encounters you have with the Lord, and He just marks you forever. And I knew at that time, I was like, this is who I am. I never really had an identity. I used to love sports a lot, and so my identity was around like sports. So what I did was who I was. So if I was playing soccer in that season, I was a soccer player. If I was playing basketball, I was a basketball player. And that's how I identified myself with until I had that encounter and really felt like the Lord gave me an identity. And I kind of like really knew who I was, in that moment right before I left China. And that was like after high school. So that's a little
Wow.
bit about me, and ended up moving to the United States in 2016 after spending 2 years in China. So
Amazing.
yeah.
You got to tell me, what was your time in China like?
Oh, that was a wild time. I remember leaving and talking to my mom. My stepmom was like, "Mom, you need to send me all the sermons in China because um, there's no church in China. Like I'm not expecting to find a church in China, you know."
Right.
And but the crazy thing was, really, I think God had already gone ahead of me because when I got there, there was a fellowship at the school that I went to, a fellowship of like international students, about 200 people that would gather together every Sunday and just worship the Lord, love God, and just get to do life together, which was crazy to think. So I got plugged in right away when I got there. Ended up, even opening my room for Bible studies, which
Wow.
was not even allowed on campus. That was one of the wild things, and I just grew so much in my faith because there was really a lot of like being led by the Spirit, and also just learning the scriptures from Genesis to Revelations, and not just like going through the motions and just be like, I love God. But this was like, hey, you could die for your faith here, so you need to know what you believe in. So it was amazing because I got plugged into amazing people that loved discipleship. So I was discipled by this amazing man who literally raised me to love the Lord and to just love the presence of the Lord, like more than anything else, more than a platform, more than influencing people on social media, but having this like intimacy with the Lord. And I feel like I grew a lot. Like the Lord stretched me so many things. We're threatened and almost like, being told, hey, you probably going to send you back home because you are continuing to do Bible studies on campus, and we don't want that. And still had the boldness to say, you know what, I'm going to continue to do this. You guys can do whatever you want to do. So that was a really sweet time in China, and also really stretching time because we're kind of forced to really stand up for what you believe in. So yeah.
Yeah, I have that thought sometimes of like, if we were put in that place, or if we were told you can't, be public about it, or you can't do that, like is our faith strong enough to last? Like, is my personal faith strong enough to last if that question were to be
Yeah.
hanging over my head? I think that's a sobering question, but
Yeah.
also one that really can test our hearts and test like the lordship of Jesus
Mm.
in our lives. Like, is he really number one? Is he
Right.
really the most important?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I love America. I feel like this is a very blessed nation. You guys have, a lot of the freedoms that so many people outside of this country do not have, and that's a blessing. That's something that we should thank God for. But at the same time, it's like, what are we doing with the freedoms that we have? What are we doing with all the liberty that we've been given? And sometimes, when you get into this place, you're very much comfortable, and it's
Right.
it's easy for you to just, neglect like the place of prayer and really love God with everything that you have and everything that you are, because you're really comfortable. You have everything that you need. And so it's a fine line that I've been trying to tread since I moved to America now, and I don't have all these pressures, like a lot of the pressures that some people face outside of the United States. But it's really a blessing to be in the States here now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and then what was your experience like growing up in Zimbabwe? Like, what was young Tatenda? Like, what was life like? Like, what was family like or community like? Just tell us just a glimpse, of what kind of life was like in Zimbabwe.
I think for me, I was raised by my grandma, so I really want to say during that time, life was so easy. We didn't have a lot. I think the house that I was raised in was like a two-roomed house. We had my grandma sleeping in the other room. I was sleeping in the other room, and that room was also like the kitchen. Where you would do all your
Yeah.
stuff. Really humble beginnings. Like, I mean, I didn't really care a lot about stuff during that time because grandma was just everything to me. And then grandma died, and really life took a sharp turn after that. I ended up just being raised by people that didn't really take care of me the right way, the way you'd expect a child to be taken care of. I was abused during that time, verbal abuse and just physical abuse, which really kind of distorted, uh, the view of what family is supposed to look like. And remember, I was not with my parents during that time. I was not raised in in a place where my mother and my father were physically there. So it was hard. Like I really, there was a time when I just was just going through the motions when I was young. Just I didn't have dreams at all. Like life was really hard. It was difficult. And then I don't know. All of a sudden, my mother decided to reach out to my dad, who was out of the country at the time, and my dad came to take me, and that was when I got the glimpse of like what the gospel is about. When the father, left everything to come and just like, you know what, I'm taking you home, you're mine, and in a way, I felt like, oh, I actually have a family. I actually belong, which was awesome, but it wasn't really when I actually got the full picture of what the gospel was like. And then that's when I was like looking back at my, during my time of, of upbringing. I'm like, oh, this is God. This was God trying to show me what truly the gospel is about.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
Father that leaves everything to come and bring his son home and say, hey, you belong here. You have a people of your own. Because I remember my dad took me, and he took me on this like road trip to see all my family, and everyone who looked at me was just like, you look like your dad. And I was
Wow.
just like blown away. And that's when I had like kind of like I knew a sense of belonging, but that really hit home when I gave my life to Jesus. I was like, this is where I truly belong. This is me. This is me in my happy place. This is me in my Father's house, where I know that there's a seat for me. Like no matter what happens, there's always a seat at the table that my Father sets before me. So, but little Tatenda loved sports a lot. I
Yes.
ran track a lot. I want to say I was good at it a little bit. I played soccer. I played um, tennis. I also played basketball. Like
Yes.
I was so big into sports. So anything that was sports related, you would find me there running around, playing around with my friends. So that was me growing up. So yeah.
That's amazing. And I think it is safe to say that you were good at it, considering you did participate in D1
Thank,
track.
thank you.
But I think that's something, just you sharing about, growing up with your grandma and when she passed, being displaced. Like, can you just kind of speak to just the cultural context or the context of your dad and mom not being there? I think that's something that sometimes it's easy when we don't grow up in a place, or we grow up in a home that's mom and dad, that stability, or that like what we would call normalcy. And it's maybe hard to even wrap minds around, like, wait, what, where were they? Like, can you give a little context to that?
Yeah, I think, my man, like life was just different. Like I see it now because, I'm much older, and want to say much wiser than I was at the time. I went through a lot when I was young. Just not having my mom, not having a relationship with my dad, not even knowing if I had a dad at all, and just the absence of fathers in homes is so huge. Like I didn't realize that until now, because one of the things that has been helping me to kind of like process this time, when I was a child, is I started going to therapy just 2 years ago,
Okay.
when I graduated from NDSU, because I just felt like I had some unresolved issues when I was being raised, and things that I never really shared with anyone. And I really feel like people don't really see the value of having having fathers in homes as something that is very powerful to kids, because kids feel that like they they might not really feel the pain of not having a father in the moment, but later on, like in their 20s, growing up, they are going to feel that. And I felt that in my 20s. Like I felt like I was just lost, and I was like, yeah, Tatenda was not just planned. Like he was never born in this family setup or family unit where the mother and the father were around. And I started like diving into that 2 years ago with my therapist, and it was really helpful to even be able to talk about some of the things that I went through. And I would just encourage people to to never underestimate just the power of having a father and a mother in a child's life. And if maybe you're listening and this is your family, this is who you are, like I'd encourage you to just find help, like seek for that, like help that you need, especially Christian therapists that are out there, and they're really like they're people that are willing to sit down with you and walk you through the pain and the hurt that you may be feeling. So yeah.
That's so good. I think that's such an important reminder too, and just like that stigma that can be in the church too. And for the last several months, I've been seeing professional Christian counselor who it has like this lens of the gospel, the Bible, but he's helping me process things in my own life, whether it's stress things or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And it's just been one of the most beautiful things. So that's such a huge reminder. Like you don't have to hit rock bottom, or you don't have to like be, it's like anyone can see that, and it's beneficial. So that's awesome. I appreciate you being open about that.
Absolutely.
So you came to NDSU, and I think you'd obviously spent time in China. Your dad was in Bismarck, right? Bismarck, yeah. Bismarck. And so you had some like exposure to different things, but what was maybe your experience at NDSU? Running track, and just kind of what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I think first of all, the education system between United States and China is very different. So I really struggled with that, like just getting through all my classes in my first semester at NDSU was just crazy and wild. But other than that, I really enjoyed being at NDSU. My time with NDSU track team was amazing. I remember also getting plugged in with Chi Alpha as well. Like that was just I just have amazing memories when I look back, and also just being in a place where this is one of the biggest universities in America, in my opinion. Like just the education that I got from NDSU just set me up for what I'm doing right now. I'm a graduate engineer in Bismarck, which has been amazing. I've enjoyed it, but I've also enjoyed the relationships that I've made. I've so many friends from college, so many friends that I even still get to spend time even to this day. So yeah, it was. I had a great time at NDSU, and I was also able to just do some amazing things. I started. I remember, I think it was in my junior year, and I was just thinking of like, what can I do? How can I give back to my community? Because I was looking at the blessing that everything that the Lord had given me through, like being at NDSU, and I started like collecting shoes and clothing items, and I wanted to, donate those to my high school in Zimbabwe, and that opportunity just like was just incredible because it opened so many doors for me. So yeah.
So when you did that the first time, was that kind of your thought, like this is just gonna be a one-time thing? Because I remember having conversations of just like, as a track athlete, you were given all these new pairs of shoes, and like you had all these shorts and shirts, and you're like, I'm never gonna be able to wear all these things. And so kind of what maybe sparked that, and then like from that first time, kind of what did that look like? Just kind of doing this thing one off, just I want to be a blessing.
Yeah, I feel like for me, it was just the Lord reminding me of where I came from. Really, being raised by my grandma, I felt like an orphan at some point. It's just because my parents were never there. And don't get me wrong, I love my parents now. We have a great relationship. I love my dad, love my mom. But at the time, it just felt like, and it just felt like the Lord was reminding me of this, and it was like, you need to do something about this. And through pressing in prayer, I was like, God, what can I do? Really, like I'm a college student. I don't have money. I don't have a job now. So and I felt like the Lord was asking me like, what do you have? And I was looking around. I was like, oh, I have so many shoes. What can I do with these shoes? And it just felt like I needed to reach out to some of my teammates and some of my friends and just ask them if they had shoes that they're just lying around, because I knew the high school that I went to would have kids that would walk miles and miles, without shoes. So I was like, man, this could be a pair of shoe that a kid would wear to go to school. And it would probably be a favorite pair of shoe to some kid out there. And just reached out to my friends, reached out to Fellowship for Christian Athletes, who just helped me tremendously. I mean, the leadership there is incredible. I shout out to Jeff Caddis. He's just amazing. And they just they just rallied behind me. We did like a shoe drive. I ended up with like 100 pairs of shoes, which is crazy because I was not expecting that many shoes. Talked to one of my friends who knew a nonprofit that donates shoes to kids here in America. And long story short, like that nonprofit ended up sending me like 100 pairs of shoes. I ended up like with 200 pairs of shoes. So it just blew my mind. And for me, when I did that, I was like, this is just a one-off thing. Like I'm just doing it once and I'm moving on with my life. I had no intention of like doing it long term or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I was planning on moving to Texas when I graduate. So I was like, I'm just going to stay in North Dakota until May of 2020. And after that, I am moving to Texas and starting my new life. But lo and behold, this amazing man, his name is Eric Hagley. He reached out to me on Facebook. He's like, Tatenda. Before that, A1 Foundation, like you guys saw what I did, and A1 Foundation reached out, was like, Tatenda, I want to sit down with you, do an interview of like, just this amazing initiative that you did. It was an initiative at the time. It wasn't a nonprofit at the time. And then you guys did that, and it just, didn't really go viral, but people in the Bismarck, North Dakota, I mean, just the state here, like, just saw it. And this one man, he reached out to me. He's like, Tatenda, I feel like you need to do this long term. And I'm like,
wow,
what? And I was like, long term? I'm moving to Texas in like a year. Like, I'm graduating in 2020, and that was 2019. I was like, I just feel like you need to do this long term. I was like, what do you suppose I do? Because I had no idea what I was supposed to do.
Right.
But he gave me this idea. It's like, hey, you can start a nonprofit. I can help you. I have people that can help you. I even reached out to you, Steven, about like how to, set up like bylaws of a nonprofit.
We got you a lawyer. And
got me a lawyer. Yeah, it was amazing. I feel like, God was filling in the gaps of like all the things that I didn't have, the things that I couldn't do, the things that I had no expertise or skills in doing. I only had the heart and just wanting to serve and just wanting to love people through the gift of shoes and clothing. And before I knew it, we had Project Love. So
yes, Project Love. And we'll talk a little bit more in a second about that too. But I remember the first time too, like, it's safe to say it was like a half-baked idea, because you got to the point where you had all these things, more than you expected, and you can't just like get a box and write Zimbabwe on it and just send it.
Right.
So I remember like then you had the logistics. You ended up doing like drums, right?
Yep.
That first time too.
Yep.
And then it costs a lot of money.
Yes.
To send that over. And so didn't you do like a GoFundMe?
Yep.
So if I remember right, you have to tell this, you'll tell it better, but did you raise the full amount?
I did, and even more.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, and the story of me like even raising the money is really funny. I mean, I just want to put it out there. Like, it wasn't just Tatenda. Like, Tatenda didn't do anything at all. I was just a vessel, and God brought in the right people. Shout out to John, one of my good friends. We had coffee in Bismarck. I was doing my internship during the time, and I was like, John, I have this 200 pairs of shoes. I don't even know what to do with them. I was planning on going home, but I don't think I'm gonna go home. So I need to ship them to Zimbabwe. It's like, dude, just start a GoFundMe. I'm like, what's a GoFundMe? I had no idea what he was talking about. And right away, John took his laptop and he's like, okay, we're gonna do this right now. And before the end of the day, I literally had $600 in that GoFundMe, which was crazy. Like I woke up just saying I'm having coffee with a friend, and God already knew what He wanted to do during that time. It was, setting up that GoFundMe, and we posted that on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and people just came along and just helped. So which is crazy.
Isn't it crazy just how like God puts the people in your path? Like,
Yes.
Just in you telling this story, you talked about Jeff, John, Eric,
Yep.
AO1, FCA, like
Yes.
all of these people, organizations that heard something and that jumped on board.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's so many times that there's something in our hearts. There's something that we're passionate about, that we care for, but it seems daunting to do it on our own.
Yeah.
But I feel like when you verbalize something and when you begin to just sow the seed, that's what I see it as, is you looking at your shoes and then reaching out to your teammates in a close circle and saying, hey, I want to do this. At the time I'm going over, I'll just get another suitcase,
Yep.
And then just when God puts other people in your path, God can do what only He can do.
Yes.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing, because even the team that I'm working with right now, and really one of the brains behind Project Love, Danny Benson, like he's he's the co-founder as well, because I had the idea and then I was like, Danny, I believe God wants us to do this, in 10 years, this is what we're going to do. And Danny's kind of like, he breaks it down. It's like, okay, step 1, this is what we need to do. Step 2. And, we are so different, but we complement one another as a team. And, just speaking about community as well, like the team that I have, these are people that I went to college with, people that I go to church with, in Bismarck. Shout out to my church, Evangel now. It's amazing place. So it's like, when you get connected, really community is the best thing. And I would encourage every young person to just find people to do life with. You have no idea what those people are going to do in your life, like, what God has put on the inside of them to help you. And literally, I've been getting all the help that I need, with this project and with this nonprofit and the work that I'm doing right now. So shout out to all the people, even like my team. Yourselves. Appreciate you guys so much. So yeah.
That's awesome. So Project Love is the name of the nonprofit.
Yep.
And how can people, if somebody's listening to this today and they're going, how can I play a role in Project Love? Like, how can I be a part of what Project Love is?
Yeah, I think it's very easy, because Project Love really is made for people that want to do more in their lives and really with their faith. It's good to believe, but the Bible also encourages us, like, with our belief, with the things that we profess and say, we need to show the right actions to it. So I'd encourage people, if you want to do it, you can reach out to us on our website. If you want to do a drive with your family and friends, it could be as easy as that. It could be as easy as just looking through your closet. Like, what are some of the clothes that I've never worn in a long time? Like these shoes, like I've never worn these shoes. Like I have so many pairs of shoes. Like you could literally do that, and then reach out to us on our website, social media platforms as well. I think that's the easiest way. Social media, it's very powerful. I know people have been talking down on it, but I've literally built, the Lord has used us to build this like amazing nonprofit through social media, through the power of social media. So you guys can do that. But the easy thing is to just plan a drive, reach out to your friends, tell them what you're doing, and then collect those things, reach out to us. We can come and collect it wherever you are. So, yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So if you're out there, we'll have all that information that you can see it if you're watching on YouTube, or if you look in the description of the podcast, you'll be able to get connected with that. No, I just love what you're doing. I love that you're saying yes to something that God's put in your heart without having all the answers. And that's how it's been from day one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think when I hear that and when I think of my own life, there's just so many people that kind of line up along the way too, that God used to bring something better out of me, or that used to speak life into me. You know, I think of, you just mentioned Evangel, like when I was a senior in high school, I kind of was like directionless. I loved baseball. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And I met with Josh Shaldall. This was when he was like living in Dickinson. And I had known him for like a year in college, or I hadn't obviously known him at this point yet, but I got coffee with him at Starbucks, and he like took interest in my life, asked me really hard questions. And I just left that conversation like wanting to be more like him and ultimately like Jesus. And that was like the moment that I knew I was going to NDSU.
Yeah.
And I just look at the last several years. I don't even know how to count that high anymore, but you know, just seeing like that one person made such an impact in a small moment. And I think it's so important. Your name means thank you, which is so sweet.
Yeah.
But just to live with gratitude and think of those people, those moments that God's used to shape us.
Yeah.
But also to think of the ways that those simple moments in our lives can shape somebody else.
Right.
When I was a senior in high school, I had a teacher named Lynette Munn Johnson, and she was my English teacher. She was really cool, one, because she was a basketball player at NDSU, so I thought that was cool. She let us watch a little bit of March Madness when NDSU was in it.
Yep.
But she did this assignment. It was called Pay It Forward. We watched the movie called Pay It Forward, and then she gave everybody in our class $5, which I didn't realize was as significant then. Teachers don't just have $5 to give to every student.
No.
And so she gave us all $5, and the whole thing was we had to do something to give to somebody else.
Okay.
And so a few of my classmates, we took ours and we're like, all right, what can we do with $20, you know? And then we heard about this family that lost a lot of their things to the flood that happened in Bismarck that year. And then while the flooding had displaced them from their home, somebody broke into their home and took all their electronics. So we took our money, some of our own money, and we bought them a gift card from Best Buy. In hindsight, it probably got them some DVDs, you know, like a bunch of high school kids. But I remember going to their house, and then the woman like broke down weeping and just started crying and hugging us and just thanking us profusely. And there was something just like that gripped me, you know, in my heart. Like the Bible talks about it's a joy to give. Like it's better to give than to receive. And that was maybe like one of those moments that really like sparked something.
Yeah.
And I just was able to see that teacher this last week. And I told that story I actually spoke at my high school, and I told that story to them, and I got to tell her that, like that impact in that small moment, an assignment, you know, we had to write a little paper on it, really made a difference in my life. And I think it's incredible when we think of those things in our own lives.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's so good, because I mean, I'm from Zimbabwe, and you know, this is maybe a place or a country that some of the people that are listening don't even know it exists, you know. And I think it's just the kindness and just the grace of the Lord for me to be able to remember some of these things and not forget, because it's very easy to just say, you know what, I'm in America now, everything is great, my life is going good, why should I even think about someone who is like 1,000 miles away from here? So honestly, it's so cool, and really my heart has just been so full seeing the impact that Project Love has had on so many young kids in Zimbabwe, and now in Peru, because we started shipping stuff in Peru last year. So it's been a blessing, and just want to say, oh, glory to God for that. Just love the community that I'm in. I remember when I moved to Bismarck, I was like, what is this place? You know, and now looking back, I'm like, wow, God surely, you know, is doing some, you know, unlikely things in highly unlikely places. I think my pastor Josh has a podcast like that.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Check it out.
We should check it out. It's amazing.
Highly unlikely.
Yep. And I'm just loving life in Bismarck. You know, I when I travel, when I go to Dallas, or when I go to one of the big cities in America, you know, and people ask me like, where do you live? I'm like, Bismarck's. Like, what do you do there? You know, and I'm like, we're loving people there. There's a community of people that is just full of love and really is showing that love to those that are around them, which is amazing. So yeah.
That's super special. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I think, I look back to, we were in a wedding together a couple summers ago,
Yes.
and it just happened to be you and I in the hotel late at night,
Yep.
just hanging out.
Yep.
And I just think it's so cool, like how God can converge paths. I know one of the things we talked about that night, you had a different name for your nonprofit at that time.
Yep.
It
I
was
did.
very early in like the stages, but we just were like talking about that. We were talking about life. We were talking about just the differences between the two of us culturally, our skin color, like
Yep.
all these things. And one, just like rejoicing over how God puts people together,
Mm-hmm.
but also just like, that was the first time we had sat down to really talk about some of those differences.
Yes.
To like talk about like experiences, the way that you worship, the way that I
Yes.
worship. Like there's so much value in just sitting down with somebody that maybe you don't understand, that isn't like you, and learning about them.
Yeah.
Our past shape us, our upbringing shape us, but also we can learn so much from one another.
Yeah.
And we can love better
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
Do you remember that conversation?
I remember that conversation, and it was in the midst of like a lot that was going on in our country, and just and one thing that I love, and even like reflecting on that conversation that we had, was just how you were willing to come to the table and just say, you know what, let's talk about this. This may be very uncomfortable. It was very uncomfortable to me, even talking to you about it, but I I realized how incredible you are in that moment, just sitting down and be willing to just like, you know what, Tatenda, let's talk about this. It's very uncomfortable. It's happening in our country. It's even happening. It was actually in Minneapolis where the wedding was, and being able to sit down and talk about the differences that we have, even within the kingdom of God, let alone in the world, but being able to appreciate all those differences and just say, hey, this is who God has made you to be. This is your personality. This is who you are, and I want to know more about that. And I felt so free to, to talk about things that I'd never really talked to anyone about. Things that people would never know that I'm going through. And I was like, this is what I'm going through. Like, this is what is happening, and this is how everything that's happening is making me feel. And I felt you were like a safe place for me to say everything that I wanted to say, and which was incredible, because you've struck me as one who is not afraid of like sitting down and having a conversation with people, even if it's uncomfortable. And I feel like that's something that I've learned about you and really appreciate about you, because we live in the Midwest where it's very easy to just get along with people and just come to the table and talk about the weather, talk about how things are going, but not really talk about the elephant in the room. And you were like bold and even humble enough to just say, let's talk about it. Like, let's have a conversation, and let's do something about it. And I was able to share my heart with you about Project Love, and that was before it was even Project Love, and what I wanted to do moving forward, and even the help and the support that you gave me, even after that, like through our text messages and just even phone calls. I'm like, Steven, what should I do here? And you were that like a brother to me, that's someone that I could reach out to and say, Steven, this is what is going on. How can you help me? So really appreciate that about you. So thank you.
Well, no, I love you. And I think, it's easier to not, to have that conversation. It would have been easier for us to just like, how's work going? And, but I think in what was happening, there was, first for me, it was just an awareness of like, because of where I grew up, because of the experiences that I had, there's just so much that I didn't know. And I think in the kingdom of God, and even in Chi Alpha, and like, we had the shared love for Christ, and we could easily overlook things, but I had never taken the time at that point to just sit down with somebody that has had a very different experience, or that potentially did, not wanting to control the conversation, but just to like listen and humble myself. And I think that was one of the things about that conversation for me was you also were willing to say hard things to me that maybe I didn't want to hear because it was going to make me uncomfortable. But I left that conversation, one, just loving you 1,000%, but also just wanting to be better about not being afraid to just engage in relationship and conversation, even when it's a little scary, you know, even when I don't know if what's going to be talked about is uncomfortable. And there's so much grace, and you've been so gracious with me, but I just like, that was one of those turning point conversations for me, because I just was at a place of like brokenness of my lack of boldness, you know, in my lack of willingness to step into a place where maybe I don't know what's being thought of. I don't know what the experience is like. So it's easier for me to just back off and just kind of, hey, I love you, you know, I love you, you know. And so, no, I just appreciate you a lot. And you've meant a lot to me. And just from a distance, you're somebody that I've looked at and said, man, I want to be like Tatenda when I get old, you know. And, you know, you just have really inspired me in so many ways. And just the way that you love Jesus, the way that you worship. And I know that was part of that conversation was, you know, there was a time when I came to you and be like, hey, Tatenda, cool down a little bit, you know, you might be scaring some students. And because you worship with boldness and you are loud and exuberant. And sometimes we don't want to ask, like, can you tell me about your experience and what worship of God looks like to you?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about worshiping the Lord. And it's because I remember what God has done in my life. And sometimes I just can't help it than just to lift my hands. And there's a time when I actually feel like lifting my hands is not even like, you know, good enough. And I'm like, I just need to jump. You know, like it's almost like everything that is on the inside of me just wants to worship the Lord. And I've been to those places where the Lord takes me and I'm just like, he reminds me of where he took me from. He reminds me of all the sin, the junk that was in my life. And, you know, some of it he's still dealing with right now. And one thing that happens is when we lift our hands in worship, my understanding is some of those walls start like breaking down. And I've gotten to see, you know, experience healing and experience like breakthrough while I'm worshiping more than reading the word or more than just like, praying. But really the power of worship, the power of praise, the power of just like, you know what, I am going to be even more undignified than this. Like I remember the story of David in the Bible when he was praising the Lord. David was a king. I think of myself and I'm like, I'm not even a king. Like I'm nothing. I'm a child of God, but I don't have a title at all. So what's stopping me from giving praise to God? And I also come from a culture which is very expressive in our worship. If you come to Zimbabwe, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like people are very like, we are running in the church, we are praising God. But I feel the understanding for me is when I think about the goodness of God in my life, like when I actually personalize what God has done to me, like I just can't help than to lift my hands. Like it doesn't matter who is standing next to me or who is watching me. To me, it's, you know, AO1, audience for one. Like I'm standing here, he's right there. What am I going to do? You know, sometimes I just have to kneel down, I just have to lie down. But this is something that I love to do. And sometimes I don't even go to church saying, this is what I'm going to do. Sometimes I get in the presence of the Lord during worship and I'm just like going through a lot and just feel like, you know what, Tatenda, the only response you can do is to just like lift your hands right now, bring this before the Lord, surrender everything to him. And when I leave the presence of the Lord, I live lighter. Like I live like, oh, like I've laid everything at the feet of Jesus. So it helps me when I express that. It helps me when I actually use my hands, my feet, my body, and just wanting everything that is on the inside of me to just give praise to God. So yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. And that's one of those things that I'm so inspired by. And, when we had that conversation too, like I remember one of the things that you said that really stuck out to me was that you felt like the way that it was handled sometimes. Because we talked about like the understanding of, there's people that's distracting or whatever. But the way that we handled it made you feel like you needed to be hidden, that you needed to be put in the corner. And instead of celebrating that and honoring and sharing that understanding, even with the other students of Tatenda, tell people why you worship the way you do, and allow people to understand what that praise and why you do the things that you do. Like, and so, I think that's just part of when there's cultural barriers, when there's differences, when we can lean into it and we can have the uncomfortable conversations. It might not always change everything, but it can take one step in the right direction of understanding and heart, and especially as believers, like to have understanding, to be able to know this is why Tatenda does this. This is why Stephen said this. And for us to move forward together as brothers, like that's so important. So you've taught me so much, and, just the friend you are to me, but also to so many other people. Like just means a lot to me. One question we always ask on the podcast.
Okay.
You look nervous. You look nervous. What's one piece of advice that you would give to 20-year-old Tatenda?
Ooh.
So your context, you're probably at the time of coming over from China, you're in America. What advice would you give young Tatenda?
Man. Just be patient. Just be patient and love the Lord with everything that you have, everything that you are, and embrace where you are. I don't think that my first few years in America, when I moved to Bismarck, I really enjoyed my environment. Like, I think even up to the point of graduation, I wanted to move away from Bismarck. I wanted to move away from North Dakota because, one, I just felt like you guys are weird. I'm like, who lives in like, below zero? Like, that is crazy on its own. Also, just the kind of person that I am, the way I worship, I just felt like I was not appreciated, or like I was not being welcomed. Really didn't feel like there was any love that the people that I was living and doing life with had for me. So I wanted to move so bad, and I was not patient with the church. I was not patient with maybe the leadership as well. And I really would say to the young Tatenda, be patient. Love God with everything that you are and everything that you have. And, with that comes, when you're filled with that love of God, when you see your brother, whether they look like you or they don't look like you, or they talk like you or they don't talk like you, or they do things like you do or they don't do things like you do, you don't even look at that. You just want to love them where they're at. And I don't think I did that. In my 20s, like 20-year-old Tatenda was just very naive and just thinking that they can, just do whatever they want to do, and like life goes on. But I think now I'm learning that everyone is on a journey, even our leaders, they're on a journey, and to be very gracious and to be very patient, to be very loving, even when it's not convenient for you. Like, I feel like I only loved people when it was convenient for me. I was only patient when it was convenient for me. When it was not convenient, I was like, I need to get away from this place. But now I love this place. I love North Dakota. I love Bismarck. I love coming to Fargo. I love my friends. I love my family. And it's just amazing to see what the Lord is doing in my life and through my life too. So I'm very grateful for that.
Awesome. That was a great answer. That was a great answer. No, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your trip to Fargo to hang out with me and be on the podcast, and just appreciate you a lot. Love you a lot. And
thanks, Steven.
For you out there listening, we just appreciate you. Thanks for joining us for this episode, for being a part of the podcast. Make sure you check out Instagram, goingsomewhere.podcast, and our website, goingsomewherepod.com. Send in questions that you want answered, suggest guests. That's where the best place to do it. But thanks for watching. Subscribe, leave a review, do all those things, and come back next week.
Yeah.
We love you. I love you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, that's so good.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. I had a blast sitting down with my friend Tatenda to talk about life, and he just lives with such a passion, and it's contagious. Every time I'm around him, I just want to be like him. I want to live with more passion, with more vibrance to my life, and so I just appreciate him so much for doing that, but also just for the friend that he is. He has lived a truly motivational, inspirational story from being born in Zimbabwe, living in China, just the challenges that he's walked through, and I appreciate his vulnerability and his openness in this conversation. And there's so much that we can learn from his story, but also just learning that there's people that have differences all around us. That's a beautiful thing. It's an awesome thing that God's designed us all differently, and we can lean in to those differences and get to know somebody at a different level. We don't have to be intimidated because they look different or because they sound different or whatever the case may be. But we can learn more about them and just dig into a relationship that can truly be life-giving if we just have the boldness and the courage to do so. So that's the challenge this week is there somebody in your life that maybe you've been intimidated to build a relationship with them, or maybe you've been intimidated to have a tough conversation with? I encourage you to do it. Be bold, be courageous. It might not go perfect, but the fact that you do it is better than if you don't. Also, shout out to what Tatenda's doing with Project Love. If you're interested in supporting Project Love, doing a clothing drive, make sure you reach out to them on social media or on their website and get involved, get plugged in, and help them build the kingdom in an incredible way like they're doing with Project Love. Thanks so much for listening, and this is a resource of Northview Church, and shout out to Northview for opening the doors for us, but also to create a space where we can truly have conversations that are real and raw and that can leave a big impact. So appreciate Northview. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next week.